you were among the 1 million people that hated Snow White, you're sexist. If you were among the 1 million people that hated Acolyte, you're racist. All these are statements that Disney or Disney-affiliated channels result to when their movies are falling apart. From box office flops to breaking the record for the lowest-rated live-action film. Disney's catastrophic downfall is near. Their stock is crashing, their streaming platform is losing thousands of subscribers, and Disney is laying off staff left to right to bear the financial hit. Even worse, Disney is dragging other studios into the mud with the release of Brave New World, which became the first film in its 14-year running franchise to lose money. But perhaps the most frustrating part is their refusal to take accountability for their box office failures, labeling their own fans as sexist for not turning up for their movies. But to truly grasp Disney's fall, you must first understand where they fell from, because the problem with Disney is not what you think. It's worse than that. The Disney you know today was not always like this, prioritizing short-term gains over long-term impact. In fact, Walt Disney would be very disappointed because he had the complete opposite mindset when he started the company in 1923. One of his famous quotes was, "You don't have to worry about money. It will take care of itself. Just do your best work, then try to trump it." Emphasized his value for quality films that resonated with fans long-term over quantity films that only prioritized short-term gains. Something Disney would later turn their back on after he died, and his work reflected his belief. He created the first full-length animated film with sound. Despite nobody believing in the idea, he created iconic characters like Tinkerbell, Cinderella, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Bra Rose, which some of you may know as Sleeping Beauty, and my favorite, Donald Duck.
Never lose sight of one thing. That it was all started by a mouse.
With each film, he tried to push the boundaries of animation, even with the limited technology at his disposal. In his words, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible," and the impossible he did.
Pinocchio!
My little Bambi.
His emphasis on the art of a good story, lovable characters, an evil villain, the triumph of good over evil, earned him 2 Golden Globe Special Achievement Awards and an Emmy Award. His films were named as some of the greatest films ever by the AFI, films that Disney would later ruin their legacy. Walt Disney was the first person to incorporate music in film in such a way that developed the story and characters authentically while offering a memorable song so nostalgic that it shaped the future of stories forever.
Darling, it's better, don't worry, it's better, take it from me.
If one word could describe Disney then, it would be perfectionism, a culture that shaped an entire generation of stories. Sadly, the world did not deserve a man so ahead of his time, and on December 15th, 1966, 43 years after founding Disney, he died from cancer, and the mantle of leadership was passed to his brother Roy Disney. Before he died, he created one rule to protect the legacy of the best film he ever created in his lifetime. And that rule was that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs should never be remade or given a sequel.
Hell no, man. What the
Fortunately, his brother Roy did not go back on their founder's dying wish. That would be the job of Bob Iger. From the 1970s through the early 2000s, Disney, under new leadership, experimented with fresh ideas while still honoring the structure Walt Disney had laid down. This era gave us timeless classics like The Rescuers, The Great Mouse Detective, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Hercules, Tarzan, and Pocahontas. Disney could not stop winning, and it felt like nothing could ever go wrong from here.
Until
one man gained the ultimate power in Disney. Between 2000 and 2005, Bob Iger went from president of Disney to CEO. Coincidentally, by this time, Disney began to lose steam. Their originals were not as innovative like the old Disney. Probably the only good film they put out during this period was Lilo and Stitch. Many Disney fans turned to Pixar, who gave them Monsters, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, just to name a few. The movies were a breath of fresh air to Disney's usual storyline, which also meant they were big money makers. Instead of doing what they've always done, which is innovate and dominate, Bob Iger decided that the safest approach was to buy out every major competitor on the market. So between 2006 and 2012, Disney acquired Pixar for $7 billion, Marvel Studios for $4 billion, Lucasfilms for another $4 billion, and many others, simply to expand its reach and avoid any real competition. A company that once prided itself in pushing the limits of animation, a pioneer of entertainment with a founder who did the impossible, had now been reduced to a corporate overlord who was so scared of of competition that the only way to stay relevant was to buy them. But it was a strategic business move that Bob Iger had to make to ensure the longevity of the company. Well, you're right. Disney bought these studios at their peak. Marvel had just released Iron Man, and the Avengers were just beginning to come together. Star Wars still had one of the biggest communities in movie history. Pixar was breaking records and winning Oscars. By owning all these studios, the new Disney positioned itself as a market leader. But behind the aggressive spending was a company creatively bankrupt. When I say creatively bankrupt, I don't mean Disney was dead. I mean Disney no longer trusted itself to be the pioneer of entertainment. From 2001 to 2021, there were over 100 big-budget Disney movies released. Out of these 100, only 25 crossed $1 billion. Out of the 25, only 7 were created by the Disney studio, and only 3 were original stories. The rest were either remake of old Disney animations or live action. This means if adjusted for inflation, Walt Disney was able to achieve double as a small studio in Kingswell with original stories than what Disney today could do as a mega corporation with billions at their disposal. Disney is so creatively bankrupt that for their 100th anniversary, they created a movie called Wish to celebrate this huge milestone. The movie was supposed to pay tribute to the beauty and style that defined Disney for the past 100 years, only for it to turn out to be the worst rated movie in 2 decades. The movie was so bad that people thought it was written by AI.
There's a distinct feeling that humans had nothing to do with this project. Both financially and critically, Wish is bombing, and I think a lot of that has to do with just how soulless and algorithmic the film comes across.
The plot was weak, didn't have a lot of likable characters. The villain was kind of random, sometimes even more likable than the main character. Humor didn't land.
Well, you do love mirrors.
That is not
The
funny.
songs were for the most part, and the payoff at the end of the movie just wasn't there. In other words, the movie Disney chose to create for their 100th anniversary was a cheap, poorly written knockoff of their OGs. This kind of behavior only comes from a studio that is completely out of ideas. In fact, many believe that the only reason Disney survived this long is because the studios they bought kept them from drowning. They're burning billions just to stay alive, though most people don't even realize it. Over the past 5 consecutive years, they've lost over $11 billion to their streaming business alone. If you factor in how much they're losing per year from animations, it gets even worse. For the catalog they've built and the studios they own, it's almost ironic that people are choosing Netflix over them. It seems no one's tuning in for their classic princess movies anymore. Disney Plus now relies heavily on the Star Wars and Marvel spin-offs just to keep subscribers. The only way to mess that up would be to make fans grow tired of the very stories they grew up loving. But surely that couldn't happen, right?
Ray Skywalker.
Star Wars was such an amazing trilogy that Disney bought it in 2012. 3 years after buying this studio, they released their first moneymaker, The Force Awakens, and absolutely tarnished the reputation of the franchise. Despite the backlash, the film made over $2 billion, so Disney thought they could probably get away with it if they did it again. So they did.
I don't know how you make a movie as bad as The Last Jedi. It takes one of the most beloved franchises of all time, throws it in the trunk of a car, and then backs it into a river.
The hate for this movie became a trend. YouTube videos calling the movie dog shit were racking millions of views. But here's the thing. Despite the lazy writing, the bad choreography, the complete reboot of Star Wars lores, and its zigzag directionless motion, the movie still grossed over $1.4 billion. That's how committed the Star Wars fans were. So, naturally, Disney decided to milk the series again, irrespective of what the fans wanted, and the results spoke for itself. Disney milked the Star Wars franchise for every dollar they could squeeze, divided the fan base, and caused a Star Wars fatigue for one of the most impactful trilogies in history. Marvel was a little bit different because Kevin Feige had already planned the future and interconnection of the Marvel universe from Iron Man to Endgame, giving Disney limited control for so long. But once that concluded,
Hello, I'm the freshest in the place. Running laps with my vibe and you can't keep the pace. Head to toe while I'm dripping in style. I'm fly with $1 million smile. Cannot beat me, never could you see me. When you this fresh, everybody wanna greet me. Check the clock, now I check my wrist. Ice so bright, the whole room stay lit.
For the first time in years, audiences were starting to feel superhero fatigue, all because their corporate overlord wanted more content for their streaming service. And Marvel was well aware of that. Their latest trailer is already getting internet cancelled so much that they disabled comments on Twitter to stem the outrage. On YouTube, the numbers speak for themselves. Over 460,000 dislikes compared to just 200,000 likes. A clear reflection of how people feel about the current state of Marvel. Interestingly, the one studio that has consistently delivered bangers under Disney's leadership is Pixar, and that success can be traced back to Steve Jobs, who as Pixar's CEO back in 2006 insisted on preserving the studio's creative freedom. He explicitly told Bob Iger that if Disney was to ever control Pixar's voice, it would be the end of the studio, and he was right. Because soon after, Disney ran out of ideas and started remaking their originals.
The movie industry is dying and no one's going to theaters anymore because y'all ain't giving us anything worth watching. We can't be bothered to think of something original. That's not a bad idea, but I'm pretty sure the people actually want an endless stream of cash grab sequels.
In the past 5 years alone, Disney has remade 15 of their most influential films, often changing the story to make it more socially correct. By consistently misrepresenting beloved stories and deliberately altering well-loved narratives to make them more commercially appropriate, they intentionally dissolved everything that made Disney. Well, Disney. Take Mulan, for example. In an effort to align it with modern political correctness, they altered the original story to make it reflect current-day values. In the original movie, Mulan was a regular girl who took on the incredibly difficult task of going to war to cover for her sick father, who would have potentially been killed if he went in his condition. Since boys were the only ones allowed, she had to dress like a boy, pretend to be a boy, and train 10 times more than the rest of the boys in order to be better than them. And ultimately, she did. She saved China, and everybody learnt a good lesson. With enough courage, even a grain of rice can make a difference. In the reboot, however, Disney, out of fear that women do not need to train more than boys to be better than them, changed the entire story to make it more socially acceptable. Instead of this regular Mulan that everybody loved and aspired to be, they gave us this, a fully established warrior for whom fighting was barely an inconvenience. Many fans who loved the original found it hard to relate to the live version, mainly because by the end of the movie, there was nothing to learn. Mulan was already perfect. They tried to make it appeal to the said generation, but took away the flaws of a good character.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now!
Actions like this divided Disney's fan base. On one hand were people who saw it as empowering women. On the other hand were people who saw it as preventing women from having flaws, which makes the characters unrelatable. In 2024, Disney did the same thing to an already divided fan base with the release of Acolyte, but this time, instead of taking accountability, they blamed you, the audience, for the failure of the series. There was so much hype around this series until it came out. Instead of amazing visuals and a nice storyline, fans got a story that failed to respect the subject matter, starring actors who were simply there for the money and incorporating choreography and plot that was so boring that it was cancelled by the end of its first season.
It's the worst Star Wars thing I've ever seen in my life. It's breaking canon.
But here's where it gets interesting. If you didn't like this series, you were accused of sexism or racism, which many people saw as a horrible attempt to justify a bad show.
Some of the Acolyte's cast members face racist and hateful online harassment.
Yes, that's good. Calling people racist is always how you should deal with criticism. No, actually the main criticism of the show is that it just sucks dick. No, that's just a small minority of people, Kyle.
Even worse, one of the actors decided to make a diss track on the haters in an Instagram reel, now deleted.
I said white people crying, what's the goal?
Oh, hell no!
As you'd expect, releasing this video did not play out as well as it did in her head. Amanda Strenberg is Danish. At age 12, she was cast in Hunger Games, a film that turned out to be a huge commercial success. By age 25, she was cast as Spider-Bite in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, a film that was also well received by the audience. I'm sure you can see where this is going. Calling people that supported her career through the years racist just because of one bad series was not the smartest idea. Fans called her a hypocrite for playing the race card when all they wanted was a good show. To many, it was not about race or politics or gender. It was about a show that paid little to no respect to the source material. This video essentially portrayed her as just another over-entitled rich actor. Regardless of where you stand on the show itself, one thing that remains true is that the series experienced extremely poor viewership since most people decided not to see it, making Disney the ultimate loser at the end after after spending $180 million on its first season. Disney's CEO is reportedly exhausted and overwhelmed by the sheer number of people who no longer want to see their movies. If Disney did anything right, it's dividing their fan base and pitting one against the other while vilifying a large portion of it. It started with good intentions, trying to bring happiness to the world, but may have lost its way in the rush to chase trends, sacrificing its identity along the way and turning Disney into something painfully ordinary.